Hi, everybody, welcome to the press. Apologies for the late show this week on Wednesday, doing everything about the RBC Heritage. Obviously, it was a very long week about the Masters, and I typically take that Monday off. It's just such a grinder of a week. And intended to do the show yesterday, and then just didn't get to it. So many apologies for me. We put all the content out there. Hopefully, you got to see everything on Monday night and Tuesday morning in terms of picks and written stuff and all that. Hopefully, you got to catch that. That's all out there. That's been out there. So we're going to get into it with you today. We'll also talk a little bit about the other events of the week with a couple of caveats. So there's the Senior PGA Championship this week at Concession. We know there's going to be at least one professional golf tournament in Mexico, the Tulum Championship on the Korn Ferry Tour. And then there's LIV Golf Mexico City, which last night, Ryan French from Monday Q Info, good guy, personal friend, very reputable. He reported that he has multiple sources telling him LIV Golf shutting down and that it could be as soon as before the tournament this week. So we'll talk about LIV Golf Mexico City, but with the caveat that I guess it could not happen, and you could just get refunded if you bet that kind of stuff. But we'll do all that at the tail end. So let's talk about the RBC Heritage. Played once again this year at Harbour Town Golf Links on Hilton Head Island, South Carolina. It's $20 million purse, $3.6 million to the winner. Couple of things to note. We've got 83 players in the field, 82 players in the field, 83 players in the field this week. And that's because this is kind of the replacement signature event for players who got into the Century by winning a PGA Tour event last season, but didn't get to play that because they didn't play the Century. So this is kind of Century Light. So that's why it's not 72 players minimum, which is kind of what it usually is. This is 82, 83 players. So that's the field this week. No cut affair, right? Everyone gets to play off all 4 rounds. So they're going to be going off and, they'll be ready to go. Tee times are already out. They're playing in twos. So it's 82. I don't know why. Once odds checker had it at 83. I don't know why they did. They must have forgot someone who withdrew. Maybe they had Justin Rose in there. He withdrew after everything that happened. The Masters just kind of crestfallen, I think, and just wanted to kind of take the week off. So 82 guys in the field, and that starts at 7:05 in the morning, and it's off of the first tee, all of it. I wanted to talk briefly about some of the changes to Harbour Town Golf Links. So Davis Love III's company came in. He does golf course architecture and did a little bit of renovation work. He does excellent renovations. He has done a number of them. I've played a number of them. And they didn't really fundamentally change the golf course too much. They moved some bunkering around, might have redone some bunkers. They wanted to do a lot of sod wall bunkers. So they converted a number of them maybe away from the railroad ties that is kind of the traditional Pete dye look, especially this course, and maybe replace some of them with sod walls, particularly a few pot bunkers. A few holes did get longer, but not by much. The first and sixth holes are longer by 12 yards, and the 18th hole is longer by 10, and really that's just because the tee is moved back into the left a little bit to try to make it a little bit more difficult for players to hit a safe shot from that tee box, because typically what happens, most players are not aggressive off of that tee. They want to try to bring that massive fairway not so much easily into play, but the other stuff before and after and to the left of it into play. So that's what they did on 18. Otherwise 18 is a great finishing hole. The second shot is not easy. The green is pretty narrow. The miss to the left is very bad. So it's an interesting golf course. I played it probably 15 years ago. It's a great test. The interesting thing about this course in particular is the greens are very small by PGA Tour standards, and I think people know that. But what's also unique about it is that the playing corridors are very small. The tee shots are generally not bad. There are a few that are somewhat claustrophobic, although there's plenty of room for a good player. But the second shots, think about number 16. It's literally a hole where you need to avoid a tree before or after the tree in the fairway to give yourself a chance. There's stuff like that all over the place. There are some good short par 4s. Number 9 is brilliant. It's a great hole. They've changed that a little bit, some of the bunkering in that, but still a brilliant hole, but 330 basically. The way, I know we're kind of bouncing around a little bit, we'll get to the model in a second, but course fit here is different than really any almost any other course on the PGA Tour. More of an emphasis on putting because you've got to hit the green. If you don't have the green, you're deep doo-doo. You've got to kind of keep it in front of you off the tee. Approach is very valuable, just like everywhere else, but off the tee is quite valuable here in a way that you don't typically see. Usually off the tee is something like 16, 17, 18% of a course fit. This week it's 21. And that's definitely different. So, you have course fits like Brian Harmon and Akshay Bhatia and Ryan Gerard and Jordan Spieth and Bobby Mack and Ben Griffin. You don't have to be a long hitter to win here. Long hitters do win here. Scotty Scheffler won here recently. Justin Thomas can poke it out there. He's won here. He's the defending champion. Matt Fitzpatrick's won here. You've had really good winners, but you also had guys that aren't necessarily the longest, like Spieth, like Webb Simpson, that have won in fairly recent memory. So it really is keeping the ball in front of you off the tee. You will probably see a lot of less than driver off the tee this week. That said, let's get into the model for the week. I don't think you'd be surprised to know that Scotty Scheffler is number one by a wide margin, given that Rory McIlroy is not here. He chose not to play. He has not played here the last several years. He's just kind of gotten to that point in his life where he doesn't feel like he has to go to every signature event, and he's going to do it his own way, and I'm fine with that. Tommy Fleetwood is second in the model. Colin Morikawa is third. Xander Schauffele is fourth. Russell Henley is fifth. Ludovic Aubert is sixth. Akshay Bhatia is seventh. Matt Fitzpatrick is eighth. Bobby Mack is ninth. Austin Smotherman is 10th. Now, that's kind of a really interesting long shot. I think Smotherman can really like this place. He won it. I mean, South Carolina Low Country and South Carolina and Hilton Head Island are different places. But he did win here last year on the Korn Ferry Tour, their BMW Charity Pro-Am. So maybe some positive vibes from him. I'm not saying to go take him on that alone, but, that's something to at least consider. So, with that said, all right, who are we looking at this week in terms of the odds board? Obviously, it's Wednesday. Things have changed a little bit, but Scotty Scheffler is obviously still the favorite. He's 4-1. I'm pretty sure he opened 4-1, maybe 4.5-1, depending on the place. But, it's low. It's low for a reason, right? He almost came back from 12 down on the weekend to win the Masters. And seems like he's got driver figured out. That will be taken out of his hands a little bit this week. It doesn't matter. He's still one of the best ball strikers on the planet. Xander Schauffele's 15-1. I think a lot of people should be on Xander this week. He's my one and done pick, and I've been on the unfortunate end of being the guy that picks his wrong suggestion among the four that I suggest every week for our one and done article. I told you to pick Rory, and I picked Jon Rahm. What the heck, Ryan? Xander Schauffele's played very well the last 3 times out. Was great at the Masters, great at the Players, great at the Valspar. He's heading in the right direction. Reason to believe. Matt Fitzpatrick is 17-1. Didn't have the best week at the Masters. He was one of those 12 guys that statistically could have won based on that now 20 of 22 years statistic I've shared. He obviously has a good record here. He's been playing pretty well. He won the Players. Won the Players, but won Valspar. And he's in good form. I think Russell Henley makes a ton of sense here at 18-1. He likes the golf course, been playing great, just gains strokes every week. I think both Patrick Cantlay and Colin Morikawa make sense at 25-1. Morikawa basically hobbled his way to a top 10 finish in the Masters. I thought that was incredible, especially for a guy who kind of has this attitude about, or has this reputation for being kind of whiny. That he got through it and he put on a show. Congratulations to him on a hell of a week. Patrick Cantlay is the ultimate horse for course played this week at 25-1. He's been playing better the last 2 times out. Before that, this year has not been great, but maybe he's rounding into some interesting form. Siwoo Kim kind of fits everywhere with his ball striking. Sam Burns being a great putter, emphasis on putting. He has been in the top 15 here 2 of the last 3 years. Obviously had a close call at the Masters. I think that's a reasonable play. Matt McNealy short here because he has a good record here, not necessarily because he was great at the Masters. Jake Knapp, I don't like him this week. He has been great all year, and you can bet him for that reason. I would bet Sepp Straka at 50-1 over him. But please strongly consider Jake Knapp for your card for the PGA Championship, and do it now. It's something like 80-1 right now. And if you can get in on that, I think you can still get a good number on him. He might play well this week. He might play well one other time before we get to Aronimink. I really like his chances at Aronimink. Get in on that number now. There's going to be some folks on Minwoo had an awful week at the Masters. What a disappointment for him, unfortunately. I think of the guys that are in the 55 to 1 range, the people are going to love Spahn, some people are going to love Goddard. Fine. I'm fine with all of that. But I think Shane Lowry is the play. He had an 80 in the final round at the Masters. That wasn't good. I get that. But, man, he's been in it so many times this year. And you kind of do for a clunker like that. But he plays this golf course very well. Akshay, we already told you, is a course fit at 60 to 1. Ben Griffin had a really, really nice Masters debut. I know it didn't quite turn out exactly the way he thought, but really, really good. 65 to 1. I think there's a lot of value this week in this range. I'm going to say a lot of names here in this range. You kind of pick. But Ryan Gerard's game travels everywhere. Sahith Theegala likes this golf course and really does fit it at 78 to 1. I think he's worth a look. JT Poston is a horse for course. I don't love him to win. I would go on a top 10, 5, 10, or 20 on him. He's 86 to 1 at this book. You probably find him 80, 85, 90, depending on where you're looking. And then you get a little bit deeper. You start thinking about like a Daniel Berger, who's 90 to 1, who I think is kind of the universal long shot pick this week. I would rather... I don't know how Brian Harman's this number. This is oddschecker.com. He's 96 to 1. Unless he came out and said he's horribly injured in the last 30 minutes, I don't understand why he's 96 to 1 in this book. I've seen him as low as 60 to 1 in other books. So he's taking a lot of action. Maybe shop around, see if you get lucky. If you can't find him, I would urge you to go look at Sunjay M. He loves this golf course, plays this tournament well. Yeah, he's had limited starts this year. Yeah, he gave away Tampa, but 100 to 1 for a guy who likes the course is a great price. Sudarshan Yalamaraju has been great the last 3 times out. And is 120 to 1. You get weird winners here. Wesley Bryan won here for crying out loud. Now, I know that wasn't a signature event, but Wesley Bryan won here. Strange things can happen. So maybe a 10 or a 20. I might put a little cash on him just to do it. Max Homa's short game looks incredible. Maybe this is a turnaround for him. He keeps playing his way back into the Masters every year on the basis of how he plays at Augusta National. Hopefully this is a turnaround for him. I would love to see that for him. A couple of guys that I think kind of need to have a great week. By the way, I mentioned Austin Smotherman earlier. He's 210 to 1. Not saying go after that, but I just wanted to kind of square that circle. Denny McCarthy's 175 to 1 this week. He played this golf tournament okay a couple of different times. He desperately needs points. Like, desperately needs good FedEx Cup points. He is in deep trouble if he wants to stay in the top 50, and he has a bad couple of weeks. Between this tournament and the one at Doral, the other signature event, Doral, he needs to find something really quickly. And I think that pressure could be good for him, but just want to kind of throw that out there. And then I think that's probably it from the win perspective. Chandler Blanchet has played very well of late. Brian Campbell is an interesting case to me. Chandler is 440 to 1. We just had him on our show, The Road to French Lick. He said he's hitting the ball really, really well. Ball striking is very good. It's just trying to get used to places. And I think a tight place like this makes it a little bit easier. The targets are much more obvious. Just play to the targets. I think he can do that. The other guy I want to mention is Brian Campbell. He's 875 to 1. He's a 2-time PGA Tour winner, and he had a really, really nice week at the Masters. That's just disrespectful. It's almost worth putting $2 on in the event that something crazy happens, because that line is disrespectful. I know he's the shortest hitter on the PGA Tour, and he said ahead of the Masters that he is working on his swing speed to not be the last guy in the distance statistic on the PGA Tour. He's still last in distance, and he's actually worse than last year, technically, but he's working on it. So maybe there's something we just haven't seen yet in the averages. I don't know. But I feel like 875 to 1 seems like a lot. I'm gonna put $1 on him. I know it'll be foolish, but I'm gonna put $1 on him. Maybe in an each way bet. You would still get a killer price on him if you played him on an each way bet. Just throwing it out there. He's gonna get 4 rounds, nothing to lose. I'm probably gonna do that one. So that's everybody in the field. That's all 82. There are some guys who are maybe not necessarily, they could be course fits, but they have a good history here. In the last 5 years, multiple top 15 finishes. So your guys with 4, no one has 5. Your guys with 4, Patrick Cantlay, Brian Harman, Sunjay M. Your guys with 3, Tommy Fleetwood, Russell Henley, JT Poston, Scotty Scheffler, and Sepp Straka. Sepp Straka makes a lot of sense here. Guys with 2, Sam Burns, Corey Connors, Matt Fitzpatrick, Shane Lowry, Mav McNeely, Colin Morikawa, Jordan Spieth, Sahith Theegala, and Justin Thomas. One of Justin Thomas's was a win last year. Now, hot hands. We've got guys who have multiple top 15 finishes in the last 5 PGA Tour events. We just kicked out the dual week of the API and Puerto Rico, so there's nobody on this list that has a Puerto Rico Open top 15 on here. And there's a lot of them. Ludwig Aubert, Jacob Bridgman, Sam Burns, Patrick Cantlay, last 2 times out, Corey Connors, Jason Day, great the last 2 times out. And he's played okay here before. Matt Fitzpatrick, obviously. Tommy Fleetwood, not at the Masters, but he gave it a run at the Masters, but played well the players in Valero. Russell Henley has been just great all year, really. Ryuhei Setsune, who I think people are going to forget about this week, but I think this golf course fits quite a bit. Jake Knapp, we've mentioned. Bobby Mack, T4, T2 the last 2 times out. Xander Schauffele, we talked about him. T3, T4, T9 the last 3 times out. Jordan Spieth, Sudarshan Yalamaraju, we've brought up T5, T6, T14, and Cam Young. I just think this place doesn't work for Cam Young, but he also just won on a Pete Dye golf course, for crying out loud. Very different Pete Dye golf course, but he just won a 1 at the Players. So, take of that what you will. That, I think, kind of hits up everything in terms of values. The same guys we've talked about in the past in terms of great strokes gained tee to green, low variance. They're all there. They're all here because they're all the top players. So, Scotty and Fleetwood and Lowry and those guys, they're all here. I kind of throw that a little bit out the window this week. This is a golf course about control. You can gain a lot of strokes tee to green by hitting it far and somewhat wild, but you need to keep it in play. That is the biggest thing here this week. Keep it in play and hit the green. It's very ABC golf. The tee to green stuff it doesn't quite matter as much. Just keep it in play. It doesn't have to be sexy. You don't have to hit it far. The advantage of hitting it far is somewhat limited, even though it's a 7,250-yard golf course. Just keep it in play. That's the big thing here. So all the guys we talked about, they're also all in the lists that we usually do for strokes gained overall, quality strokes gained, and strokes gained on the approach. All the usual suspects. It's really nice kind of having the clarity of basically a month of 2 huge tournaments and 3 others where most people played at least once. Scotty didn't, but most other people played once. And you get a sense of what they did. And, you have, in this field alone, 16 guys who have multiple top 15 finishes in the last 5 PGA Tour events played. That's pretty good. And you have a very long list of guys who like this golf course. 17 of them that have multiple top 15 finishes the last 5 years. So this is a pretty ABC week. I do think you have a lot of value to find in the, depending on where you're shopping, 60 to 125 to 1 range. I'm not saying that Scotty's not going to win. He could easily win and make everyone look really silly. But he's playing very well. Yes, he played very well at Augusta. However, is that an off week because the driver hasn't been good before that, or we're just back to normal operating procedure? Also, this place produces weird winners, so want to get that on your radar for the week. That's pretty much everything for that. Now, let's talk about the other events of the week. So the LPGA is playing this week. They are out in Los Angeles at El Caballero Country Club for the JM Eagle LA Championship. So it's their last tournament before the Chevron Championship, which is their first major of the year. And that will be played at Memorial Park next week. So let's talk about the JM Eagle LPGA. A couple players to bring up. I'm not going to have a deep card here. I've got a lot more resources on the RBC Heritage because I think it's a good opportunity this week. But some players to bring up. Hannah Green is 22 to 1. That's downright insulting. She's won 3 times this year. She loves this tournament. She won this place more. Went twice at Wilshire, the former host. El Caballero is not that different. I mean, it is different, but not that different. She likes Los Angeles golf. It makes sense, 22 to 1. Hugh Kim is 11 to 1. She's the outright favorite. But she might be a little tired. I mean, she's played basically 4 in a row, 1-2. She might be a little tired. Minjee Lee's kind of interesting at 16-1 on the ball strikers course. I would look down toward Rose Zhang, who has started to show a little bit at 35-1. Lauren Coughlin's 45-1. She just won. And she's in like the top 10 in the world, and she's 45-1. That blows my mind. I think Mimi Rhodes is an interesting bet at 56-1. She seems to like what she has found here on the LPGA so far. I like her game quite a bit, coming over from the Ladies European Tour. I think she's an interesting number. I think Leona Maguire at 90-1 is also interesting. Same with Karis Davidson at 105-1. You don't have to be long to win this golf tournament. It helps, but you don't have to be. Leona's shown some sides. Karis Davidson showed some sides. She played very well at Shadow Creek, and I think just isn't kind of getting that expected bump. But she has it in her to have some very good finishes toward the tail end of last year at a bunch of top 10s between last year and so far this year. So I think that's a good, interesting price. She can be one of those kind of win out of nowhere players. Other than that, I really don't have a lot of folks to stick you to. This isn't quite as deep of a tournament as the last few weeks. Like 31, 32 of the top 50 are competing this week. Last time out, I think it was like 45, 43. Basically a major caliber field for Shadow Creek. You're not going to get that here quite this time. But I think they're interesting. And then Steph Kyriakou has not had a good start to the year, but I know she has it in her. I kind of have a bias toward the Aussies this week. 300-1, I think, might be worth your long shot play there. All right. The event we know we're having in Mexico is the Tulum Championship on the Korn Ferry Tour. And this is an interesting week for a couple of reasons. One, there's no DP World Tour event this week, so Eugenio Chacarra is playing this week. He is the favorite to win at 16-1. He had a good week at the Indian Open the last time we saw him. Good title defense, but for him to be the favorite is kind of goofy, to be honest with you. If you know who won here last year, which is Bryson Nimmer, who's a guy I would consider a friend, he is a guy who keeps it in play. He has a foul ball, but he keeps it in play. Keeping in play matters on this golf course. You can't flail too far right, too far left. You can find some nasty stuff off the tee. So just keep that in mind. I'm not saying go bet Bryson Nimmer to repeat, although he's had a pretty decent year so far. But Jeremy Gandon's been playing well. He just won. Been playing great. Blades Brown at 25-1. He almost won last time out. He's playing great. This would kind of be the right place for him to do it. He's going to find a way to the PGA Tour for next year. It's just how he does it. 25-1, I think, would be an interesting play. And then you kind of get a little bit trickier. Cole Hammer just had his best finish ever in the Korn Ferry Tour. 45-1. This is very much a tour about momentum most weeks. So I think that could be an interesting play to look at. Adam Hadwin is a keep it in play guy. He's 60-1. He wants to get off this tour so bad. He doesn't want to be here anymore. He wants to be back on the PGA Tour playing for $20 million purses. I think he's someone to go look at. Justin Suh, I think, is interesting at 80-1 for sure. Worth a look this week. James Nichols, 90-1. I like him quite a bit. Been playing okay. Okay enough. But he also seems to kind of like these tropical events. Played well in Bahamas the last couple of years. I think he's worth a look as well. So nothing really deep here. Just in case you're curious, Bryson Nimmer is 140-1 to repeat. I would not take that bet, but he is 140-1 to repeat. So just keep that on the radar. All right. LIV Golf Mexico City. Club Day Golf Chapultepec. If they have this, and we're still recording this, so I haven't seen anything in the last few minutes, but let's assume everything's happening, and if not, we'll just delete this from the recording. But John Rahm is 3.5-1. He's basically good at every tour. This is a two-person tour. I hate to say that, but I think it could be a 3-4-person tour this week. Rahm and Bryson make sense. They can overpower this golf course. The golf ball goes 12 to 15% farther because they play at 8,000 feet of elevation in Mexico City. The golf course is tight, so that's kind of the limiting factor, but everybody's a club longer, so that's everybody, right? So instead of hitting, 9 irons, you're hitting wedges. Basically, you're clubbing down a club every shot, and at least, and if they like to play it firm. So I think Rahm and Bryson make sense. I think David Puig makes some sense to a degree, but I would go for Abe Answer a little bit more, especially if we don't know if this is the swan song, right? If they play it. Is this a swan song for LIV Golf in Mexico City? Then Abe Answer would be a guy to pick as a Mexican player, guy to really, really like. Same for Carlos Ortiz, who I think a lot of people thought could do something last week and, didn't. So he's probably a guy to think about. Other than that, maybe a Ben on at 60-1. That could interest me at that number. He's always good tee to green. This is a tee to green course. That could be interesting. Richard Lee has played very well on LIV. He's made the most of whatever he's going to get out of this experience. He lost in a playoff to Bryson, so at least he made a few $1 million doing that, I suppose, coming through their Q school, their promotions event. 75-1, I think, makes him kind of interesting here this week. I don't have a lot of bets. I don't bet LIV extensively. I just don't see the value because I think it's a most weeks a 3-person tour. So, and Neiman won here last year, by the way. He's 12-1, but it just hasn't been quite that good. So I think I would go with your easy ones, your Rahm and Bryson to kind of cover yourself, and then Answer and Ortiz for the home nation play, and then Richard T. Lee and Ben on because of the ball striking. All right, that's going to do it for us this week on the show. Thanks so much for listening. No video version this week. We'll be back to normal service next week. We'll have plenty of events to talk about. I have no bets, by the way, for the Senior PGA Championship. I post the odds, but if you want to go bet that, you can go consider Ernie Els and Stuart Sink and Patrick Harrington. I call it a day. That's enough for me. Sorry, I want to get that 10 seconds in on that tournament. All right, so we'll be back to our normal schedule next week. Video show on Monday. Tuesday, we'll do an additional show on all the other events. You can join Golf News Net for $40 for 1 year, $70 for 2 years, or $100 for 3 years at golfnewsnet.com. You can get a hold of me on social media at Ryan Ballingy or Ryan Ballingy Golf. Easier to go to Golf News Net on social media. The handle is Golf News Net. Every platform, you can find us there and follow us there. And we post good information about news conferences and stories and all that stuff, so you get good information, makes you a more informed player about what's going on in this space, just week to week, and make you a better, more knowledgeable person when you try to spend your hard-earned money on this stuff. I'm Ryan Ballingy. Thanks so much for listening. I appreciate it. We'll talk to you next week right here on The Press.